Ray in Maryland. Go ahead, Ray.
Hey now, Eddie. How's it going, brother?
Good, man. How are you?
I am well, thankfully. And just a fucking great week of interviews, man. I kept wanting to comment on one, and then you do another great one, and then another great one. But the real standout for me was the Sully one, even though the Bruce one was really good, too, just because I dig that guy. But the Sully one, it was just like he just laid it out there, and I have seen the doc, and it was great. But then my wife works from home, and she came out here and heard part of it, and he was talking about that intimate evening with Godsmack thing. She's like, I'd really like to see that. So we did get the tickets, and we got 4 of them because my brother and sister-in-law are going with us. And $79 a piece. We're 8 rows from the stage, and $400 for 4 tickets after the fees. So that I thought was pretty cool, and I think it's going to be pretty interesting. And they do this conceptual thing because I've seen Godsmack before. They play concerts live. Like, they plug in and actually hit drums. And, and that's why I want to go because, this is starting to be like a unicorn spot. But I stumbled upon something today that I've never heard. And it was an interview you did with Paul Stanley in the year 2000. And I was watching something else in the algorithms, I guess. Oh, you might want to listen to this. So I listened to it. It was about 15 minutes. And it was so funny. It was from 2000. And Paul said the Final Kiss show was going to be in September. And I'm just sitting there listening to this, and you were like, and I just saw you guys a couple of nights ago, or recently, and your voice has gotten better. Is the Broadway thing affecting it? And he's like, yeah, it affects both. And it's so great that we're going out on top and, at the top of our game. And then I'm thinking, this was 24 years ago. And I just found it amusing. And you were real good at it. And Paul, I guess you guys were still on speaking terms, but I found it really fascinating. And I had never
Ray, was that a radio interview?
Yes, it was. I think you were on WNEW or something like that.
Yeah. Was he on the? He was on. I'm assuming he was probably on the phone, right?
Yeah, he was.
Man, I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember that because so this was there a reference in that interview at all about him not showing up to my studio? Do you remember at the beginning, like him saying something like, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't know I was supposed to do it or something like that? Do you recall any of that?
Correct.
There was.
Yep. It's at the very beginning.
Yes. Okay. So now I remember the backstory to that. So so I've only interviewed because again, as everybody knows, we run hot and cold and I can't really speak for what goes on in Paul's head. But interestingly, I just saw Paul. I mentioned this before a couple weeks ago in Vegas. And thanks, Ray. I'm glad you enjoyed the interviews. I got to run. Thank you. I just saw Paul a couple weeks ago in Vegas. I was hosting the Chris Angel thing, and he was there because he's friends with Chris, and he was at the previous one as well. And we had a little exchange from the stage, and it's fine. I just, I can't really say. I don't know day to day, week to week where things are at, but is what it is. But the story to that is, so back around when Ray said that interview was 2000, 2001, Paul Stanley was supposed to come into the studio and do my radio show in New York City on that radio station that I was on at the time, which unfortunately no longer exists, WNEW. And I had gotten confirmation that he was going to do it, and I was pre-promoting it, and there was a lot of excitement about it. And as you would imagine, Paul's going to sit down with Eddie for an hour or whatever. It was, there was a lot of people tuned in, ready for this to happen, and we really promoted it. And that night, I was really left twisting in the wind because he never showed up. He just, never showed. And, I didn't know really what was going on. I didn't know if it was some sort, again, he heard something or somebody got in his ear and he reneged on it. I have no idea. Still to this day, I have no idea. And then he claims that he never really knew about it. So I don't know what went on, but I was, needless to say, pissed, and the audience was pissed. And look, I understand shit happens and people get derailed or miscommunication or forget. That's happened to me. I mean, I've been booked for things and I've literally forgotten, whether it's something as simple as a conference call or being somewhere. A little easier now when you've got iPhones and you can put reminders in, but still, you can still space. Happens. I get it. But that was bad because there was so much excitement about that major New York City radio station. And we were all going to have this, we're going to have this big interview and all this stuff. And just complete no-show. So I remember that the next week or whatever, whoever was supposed to set up the interview or whoever it went through came back to me and said, well, yeah, he said he didn't know and he forgot or whatever it was, but he'll call in now to at least make good in some way. And so that's what that interview was. Him calling in the week after he was supposed to come in because he didn't come in. And I've not heard that interview in ages. I mean, again, into year 41 now, I vaguely remember any of this stuff. But when Ray met, because I've only interviewed Paul a handful of times on the record. So when Ray mentioned that to me, it brought me back to that incident. And I knew it was probably around that incident at the time. Yeah, it's kind of jogging my memory now. But look, I'm glad that stuff's out there. I'm glad that people have that stuff on YouTube from my history and my archives. Because like I told you, I've got decades of archives of recordings and interviews and stuff. But for the life of me, like to go through it on all the different formats, cassettes, reel to reel, mini discs, DAT tapes, every format you could imagine. And I don't even have the machines to play them all. So I'm glad that people find my stuff out there and upload it to YouTube and transcribe it or do whatever they do with it, because who knows if in my lifetime I'll ever have a chance to dig into that and go through it. But there's some great stuff there.